gentlemen, welcome into an exciting episode, an exciting edition of Fantasy Daily. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is Monday morning, August 15th. Thanks so much for getting up earlier. Maybe you're seeing it later tonight. Maybe you're watching tonight's episode or tomorrow's episode tonight on TikTok. If you are, thanks for joining me, everybody, on TikTok. We are filming this show for tomorrow, so you guys get the little sneak peek behind the scenes footage. But we are filming for the beginner's guide for fantasy football. So basically the show where if you just got into this, if you're just getting into this wonderful world of fantasy, people at work are inviting you, and you're downloading the app and you're like, what is this? What is this stuff? This is a show for you. So if you are a seasoned veteran player, a lot of the stuff in the show might, become obvious to you, or it might be some stuff that you missed. Maybe some points that I take with me every single day have become muscle memory, and it doesn't necessarily kind of correlate to how you play. Maybe you can pick up some cool tips along the way. So if you are a seasoned veteran player, some of this might be redundant, some of it might, resonate with you, but anyway, these are points that we're going to make. Everybody, I am so excited that I am back finally doing this. Everybody on TikTok, thank you for joining me. Follow me there at Fantasy Daily Football. Follow me on Twitter at @NPasswell. I, as always, am your host, Nathan Passwell, and thank you so much for joining us. So let us get right into it because we got a lot to pack into these shows, and like I say always, I don't want to keep you for too long. So let us get right into our quick points. Now this one I'm going to have to pause and take a timeout real quick. Because if you have been following Fantasy Daily since the beginning of the offseason when we finally went back to 5 days a week, we've been talking about a lot of players that we're excited about, okay? A lot of players the last few days we got to see some glimpses of in preseason. Some things not so great, some things great. But one thing I want to say about this show so far this year is that I feel like we have got a lot of hits already. So my loyal fan base, the ones who do come see me every now and then and check in, thank you so much, obviously, for joining. But I can feel it. It is going to be a good year. We had a great season last season with accuracy, and I really feel like this year is going to be another even level up from that. So let us get right into one of my picks that I was over the moon about on draft day or draft weekend, and that is Malik Willis, baby, on the Titans. So Malik Willis in his preseason game looking great, passing touchdown, rushing touchdown. He gets pulled from the game because he was rushing a little bit too much, and obviously all the reports coming out, everybody takes that as a negative. If you're in preseason, right, and you're Mike Vrabel and you think that this guy is your future, you drafted him to be your future, and he's running around out there, not risking injury, but they saw what they needed to see. So obviously, if he's not passing enough, that's something that they can work on, they can build on. But the excitement factor for Malik Willis is there, and I am very excited for the day that, nothing against Ryan Tannehill, but I'm very excited for the potential of Malik Willis on the Tennessee Titans. So I would really, really like to, kind of push that forward and say, once this does happen, and it's not going to happen this year, but keep an eye on Malik Willis, because if they do go to him at the end of the season, he might be a fantasy points monster. So I'm very excited for Malik Willis, his potential in that offense, and I do believe that they're going to kind of use him as that, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts role, where they want him to run, but they also want him to pass. So excited for Malik Willis. Going on to another wide receiver that we were stoked about, and that is George Pickens. Now, I am over the moon about George Pickens. There's a lot of wide receivers that come into the league, and they look like absolutely wildly talented players. We talked a lot about Chris Olave. I love Chris Olave because of his crisp route running. He is such a dynamic route runner that he makes people miss. He gets open, and he gives the quarterback, a chance to have a 5-yard gap where he can, throw the ball in with ease. So with Jameis Winston, that would be absolutely perfect. I love Chris Olave. But let's talk about George Pickens. This is a guy who absolutely demands targets. He is not on the field to be liked. This guy just wants to play bully football, old school, get out of my way, I'm going to get the ball. George Pickens absolutely annihilated a cornerback who tried to do a 5-yard press on him, forced him to the ground, just absolutely embarrassed him on the field, and then he gets the toe tap on the in the end zone. Absolutely wild play. So very excited for George Pickens. I think that we should, keep an eye on him. As much as we talk about Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson, I do believe that this is a player that's going to demand targets. And maybe if we see a relationship with him and Kenny Pickett, it's going to be a thing. So we'll see. But I love the ability and the upside of George Pickens. Moving on to one of my favorite players coming out of the draft. One of the players that if you follow me during the offseason, if you follow me on TikTok, there is not much more I can say about how over the moon I am about this player's fantasy potential and how I believe he will be the week 1 starter for the Houston Texans, and that is Dameon Pierce. Now, Dameon Pierce last night only had 5 carries, but still you could see it. He is easily the best running back on that team. So now reports are finally coming out. He's guaranteed to be the week 1 starter, blah, 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 or unofficially guaranteed to be the week 1 starter. The camp buzz is going around. And he clearly has the potential. So if you've been following the show, we've been all about Dameon Pierce. If you've already had your fantasy draft, which is way too early, but if you had your fantasy draft already and, Dameon Pierce is out there on the waiver wire, I definitely suggest you throwing him onto your bench and hang on to him, because I think that week 1 he could definitely be the starter. Last night he only had 5 carries. He had a 20-yard burst up the middle. He had 9.8 yards per carry in that preseason game. I understand it's preseason, but Dameon Pierce looks absolutely dominant, and I am ready for Dameon Pierce to be the week 1 starter on Houston. They are really, really vacated for talent over there outside of Brandon Cooks and Davis Mills, which I believe will be a good connection. But I am really excited for Dameon Pierce's upside coming into this season. He could go basically the end of your draft and end up being a running back 2 for you for the entire season. Maybe even running back 1. We don't know. Alrighty, so those are the quick points for tonight. Some players that we're really, really high about. Like I said, I'm very confident in this year. The analysis that we've been doing here, the work that we've been doing here, really excited for how these players are turning out and the way that our off-season analysis is finally starting to come into form and we're able to see the fruits of our labor. So, I got 2 sections for the beginner's guide tonight. And like I said, if you are a veteran seasoned player, this might be a little bit redundant for you, but maybe there's some stuff in there that I throw in, some points that you can kind of take with you and make into your muscle memory. And these are really things that I have, I do now unknowingly. I do these things now as muscle memory and kind of, just out of reaction that I learned, in the last 10 years of playing fantasy football. So I would like to pass those along, but we also have a second section that is going to be for terms. Now, I understand that if you are a veteran season player, this is going to be extremely boring for you towards the end, so obviously, I understand if you're not staying tuned for that part, but we are going to get into those terms and stuff for anybody who is new because those are super important. But first, let us get into 5 points that I have for beginners who have never ever played fantasy football before. The 5 major tips that I believe can make you and break you in fantasy football. The 5 things that I think you need to keep under your belt throughout the season to make you a fantasy warrior and go after those fantasy titles. Got to get into the playoffs first. So first, the number 1 rule that I have is be open to change. Be open to doing something different from week 1 to week 2. Once the draft is over, you need to move your focus over to week 1. I have a lot of people who reach out to me every single season and they say, somebody's offering me this trade, but I drafted this player in the 2nd round. Once the draft is over, it does not matter where you drafted your player, and let go of that immediately because it will absolutely hold you back from making trades and making roster moves that could vitally, vitally excel you into the playoffs later on in the season. So for example, Jonathan Taylor. We talked about it a lot last year. We talked about at the beginning of the season, I think it was about week 3, I was telling everybody, I was really blowing the air horn on saying you need to go get Jonathan Taylor because he is not going to be any cheaper than he is right now in your league. Those first few weeks he kind of didn't do great, and we were blowing the air horn on this show saying you need to go get him, and I had some people saying I'm not going to trade Zeke to go get him. I'm not going to trade Christian McCaffrey to go get him because I paid X in the draft to get them. It does not matter. Once you have something staring you in the face and you can jump on it, you absolutely need to because the upside is there, the potential is staring you in the face. Not to mention, one big thing that people really do often that does not help them in the long run is they forget that they have trade value. Your draft is never ever, your season isn't done once you finish drafting. Obviously, injury is always coming. Players getting demoted, players getting promoted. That is always going to happen. It's going to happen. You have to prepare for the inevitable. So that's why we say be open to change. Be like water. Make sure that you're always flowing with what's going on in that week and you're not caught up on what's going beforehand. So, like I said, once week 1 ends, move on to week 2. You know what I mean? Figure out where your your flaws are on your team and see if you can make a trade, make a waiver move to fill those spots in your team, because that's really what it comes down to, is roster construction. On the draft show, when we talk about draft strategies and tips, we're going to talk a lot about roster construction and how if you are very, very powerful at running back, you can afford to lose some running back to supplement what you're lacking at wide receiver. So we'll do a lot of trade talk throughout the season. We'll get into a lot of that, but the big point that I want to make here is that every single year I have players who reach out to me or friends who reach out to me and they're saying, I'm so close to winning weeks, but I can't do it. It's because you're missing that extra edge. It's because your tight end is hurting you. It's because one of your wide receivers is hurting you, and you need to make that change. So if you could supplement points elsewhere, you absolutely need to pivot and do that. So number one rule, be open to change. Gotta roll week over to week. Make sure that you are doing that and you're not getting hung up on whatever week it was. So quick sip time here with my product placement. All my TikTok people, hello. And spilling on myself live. Alrighty. Moving on to number 2. The second tip that I have, and the one that I really need to push on a lot of people during the season, because like I said, they're not open to change. They want to keep their roster. They want to keep what they drafted. They want to keep what they feel confident in. And maybe they're chasing points that are never coming to them. So with that considered, number 2 is know the waiver wire. And now I'm not saying play the waiver wire, I'm saying know the waiver wire. So obviously you want to play the waiver wire when you need it, but know what's out there. Now me personally, every single season that I play, whether it's week 1, week 2, or week 15 or 16, I have about 3 wide receivers and 2 running backs that I know in my head every single week I can target on the waiver wire. Therefore, you have players that aren't necessarily on your roster, but you are keeping an eye on them because nobody else is. So if you're looking at the waiver mostly, right? What every single person in your league and most leagues will do is they'll go into the waiver wire and they'll look through the first 2 or 3 swipes. They'll scroll 2 or 3 times and that's it. They're waiting for a name to jump out at them, right? Well, you have Fantasy Daily. You don't need for a name to jump out at them. I'm telling you the names as we go because we're doing the deep dives on research. So every single week, I go in there, I look at running backs, I look at wide receivers, and throughout the season, we'll mention them on the show. So, like and subscribe, all that stuff to keep up with it, but we're going to mention them throughout the season. And you're going to hear me say it a lot. If this guy's on the waiver wire, keep an eye on him. And that's what I mean when I say if he's on the waiver wire, take a look at him or keep an eye on him. Know where he is. Know your league structure. Know that, my friend Matt in the league is hurting at running back. He might be looking at that guy. Well, if you're playing Matt in 2 weeks, you might want to scoop up that guy so he doesn't have the chance to do it. So me personally, I'm always keeping up on that waiver wire because it is absolutely vital to survival. So with that, I also want to package in the idea of make sure you are prepared for your bye weeks ahead of time. If you know that, I have a defense on bye week 6, okay, you can get a defense not on the waiver wire as a free agent the Friday before Sunday football, and you're fine. If you need a wide receiver, you need a tight end, you need a quarterback, you need a running back, it's not going to happen. So that's why having those players in your pocket, and it's almost like, to me, it's almost an unofficial roster. You have your roster, you have your full roster with your however many bench spots, and then you have players that you're thinking about that are off your roster. They're not necessarily on your team, but they're on your radar, and you're making sure that you're keeping an eye on them because at some point in time, they might need to get called up to action, and you're never without going, oh crap, where am I going to grab somebody? How am I going to grab somebody? What am I going to do? You already got it prepared. You already stayed tuned to Fantasy Daily, so you're golden. You're going after these fantasy championships with us. So that is rule number 2, that waiver is vital to survival, and make sure that you're keeping up with it. Make sure you have an unofficial roster, players that you're keeping an eye on because they've saved my butt a million times. Players that I have been keeping an eye on and they go down Thursday night while I'm watching the game, and 2 minutes after their injury, I'm able to scoop up somebody for Sunday and not worry about it. That happens all the time. And I really can't stress enough how much it has excelled me in certain weeks compared to other players because I'm always on top of it. I always know what's coming next, and I always know that I have somebody as a contingency plan if the worst case scenario were to happen. And it's going to happen. It's going to happen, so you got to be prepared for it. So that is rule number 2. Waiver is vital to survival, and be prepared for your bye weeks. Go ahead and look 2 or 3 weeks in advance, 3 or 4 weeks in advance, and know what's going to be there. Look at the certain players, you know what I mean? If Detroit's defense is awful against the pass, maybe target that wide receiver, even though you don't usually play that wide receiver or a wide receiver from that team. So we'll get into that a lot during the season as well. Obviously, it comes down to every week. And speaking of that, let's get into rule 3. Sip time. That is play your weeks. So rule number 3 is play your weeks. Don't be playing everybody else's weeks. Don't be looking around at a million different things and getting drowned in everything that's around you. Play your week. So if it is week 1 and you are playing your friend from a different department in your work, and that's who you're playing this week, know what team he has. If he's playing Jalen Hurts and you have A.J. Brown, throw A.J. Brown in there. If you have Dallas Goedert, throw them both in there, because if he throws a touchdown or he throws points, you get a little piece off of that, you know? So play your weeks on who you're playing. Do not play the season. So that's basically the big point. Play your week, not the season. So I see a lot of people who, you know, my brother actually, shout out my brother Dan, stand-up comedian, go check him out at Dan Paswell, TikTok, all that stuff. Dan Paswell Comedy on YouTube. So my brother Dan, he does it a lot. He will grab a player for 2 or 3 weeks from now, and he'll forfeit a week. And then weeks 13, 14, he's struggling to get into the playoffs, and he has to get a win to get in situation because he threw that week because he wanted to have a player 2 weeks from now. Play your weeks, not the season. There will always be another player that you can run and grab. There will always be somebody else. Yes, you might be shooting for the moon, but if you're grabbing a player 2 weeks ahead of time to prepare for next week or the following week, you're already shooting for the moon while shooting yourself in the foot for the week that you're currently on. So me personally, I am always playing the weeks that I'm on. I'm playing the opponent that I'm playing. I'm not worried about whoever's playing this and who I'm playing next week. I might look at it a little bit for roster's sake to make sure that I have somebody available and I don't have to scoop them up on waiver. I can get them as a free agent ahead of time. But me personally, I'm playing that week. That week only. I'm not worried about the season. Overall, I'm buying wins. I'm buying weeks. And it's not till week 10 or 11 that I'm worried about playoffs. I'm buying week after week after week, making sure that I'm getting those wins, focused on that, and then I'm getting to the playoffs. Once I'm getting to the playoffs, then I'm kind of prepared. And we'll talk about that playoff primer during the season and all that stuff. So obviously can't fit everything into this one beginner show. But if you are a beginner, you've never done this, I definitely recommend following the show because we are constant with this. We are always going with this every single day, making sure that we're keeping up. We're on Twitter. We're on, you know, all of this. And I'm always in here making sure that you guys got the best up-to-date fantasy show. So just picture me like an employee. You know, you employed me to go sit in a dungeon and just find some fantasy football stats so you guys can win your leagues and make fun of all your friends. That's what I'm here for. I want you to make fun of your friends. That's the whole point of this whole show, is so you can mock your friends, and that's what we're going to do this season. So moving on, we got 12 minutes to go before I have to close this out because I don't want to keep you guys too long. So number 4. Another big important rule that can win you a lot of leagues, and it's won me a lot of leagues, especially my work league. So if you guys are out there, you're playing in work leagues, and there's a lot of other people, not to mention, if you play in a casual work league, okay? If you play in a casual work league where people are just inviting people and throwing $100 down, and you watch Fantasy Daily, guaranteed playoff spot. I guarantee you that this show will make sure that you get into the playoffs in that league and get very close to a championship. And I'm putting my money where my mouth is because I've done it many, many times before. I have a lot of friends who, you know, they'll reach out to me and just be like, hey, Nate, what do I do for this guy? And I'm like, oh man, easy, you do this. And then they win and they get in. It's the little things that you have to pay attention to. Not everybody's paying attention to it. Not everybody's hopelessly obsessed like I am. This is life. This is all I do. This is all I want to do. So let's get into it again. Know your league structure and your league mates because every league is different. Now, a little bit of verbiage that you guys will hear me say is always talking about home leagues. So when I say home leagues, that's when you're playing with your aunt, your friends, your homies. There's no real money involved. Maybe it's an 8-man league. Maybe it's a 10-man league, something like that. So it's not really hyper competitive like a lot of leagues are. Those leagues, those home leagues that you hear me refer to, you're going to get a lot of free wins out of that home league because not everybody's super invested in that one. And that's going to be one that you tear through. So every league is different. In that league, you might have 2 or 3 people that you're really close with. Those are the players that you'll be able to trade with. Those are the managers that you'll be able to trade with throughout the season. and actually get a deal done. There's a lot of players who think they are absolute, football gods, and they will not trade with you unless you're paying absolutely full price. So we'll get into trades a lot more when we talk about the trade show. That's usually around week 3 or 4, 2 or 3 actually. Between week 2 and 4 is when we really get into trades. But we're going to talk about that a lot. And I personally am somebody who will give a round 1 player for 2, 3, 4 players once I really feel the potential. But anyway, I don't want to get too far into that. Know your league structure. Know the people that are in there. Know the players that are going to grab 3 or 4 people off the waiver wire every single week. Know the players that are going to wake up at 3 a.m. to go get the waiver wire free agents that you weren't able to get. And then at night, you're setting the waivers because you ain't waking up at no 3 a.m. You got Fantasy Daily. You don't need to wake up at no 3 a.m. So know what those people are going to do. Know what you can do against them. It's kind of sad to say, but Dan, going back to my brother Dan, he's a Titans fan. Where do you think I've dumped all my Titans players that I don't want throughout the season? It's fantasy football. I'm here to win. And if I can move my Titans to a Titans fan in exchange for something that I want, I'm absolutely going to do that. My friend Manny, if you guys have long-term fans of the show, Manny, he was one of the original members of Fantasy Daily. He's a Steelers fan. Guess who got Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell every single year that I traded them? It's going to happen. They're going to do it. They're going to take the bait. So if you can give them the bait by knowing who they are, knowing what they're interested in, do it. A Patriots fan will 99% of the time take your Patriots players, and you don't want any of them. Not me, though. I'm a Patriots fan. I don't want no part in Patriots and fantasy. I want titles. I don't want no bum-ass running backs. Anyway, so I said ass. Who cares? I'm letting it roll because I feel that passionately about it. Even though John had Ramondre Stevenson as a sleeper on his show, and that might work out. But anyway, I don't want no Patriots. I'm not taking a chance on that. So know your league mates, know your league structure, because every league is different, and it can really make or break what you're doing throughout the season. So know how to play that league. Know that your dynasty league and your work league may be different than your home league. Know which ones are hyper-competitive. Know which ones you got to go up in a little bit more. Know which ones that you can kind of mail in and just set your lineups every week. I have a ton of leagues every single season. There's 3 or 4 that I just set my lineup and walk away. Alrighty, so moving on into my last and most important tip before we go into the terms and conditions, because I'm going to run through that section just for the players who have never really played before, and a lot of the lingo kind of gets them mixed up. So the number 5 rule that I saved for last is actually the number 1 rule, and I know it sounds kind of silly coming from me, somebody who is literally sitting in a room right now talking to a camera about fantasy football. But rule number 5 is have fun and enjoy it. 17 weeks goes by so fast, and you won't believe the amount of people who I get commenting on my post or something and getting extremely aggro. You guys get giga chat over me sometimes telling me, you told me to start this player and he did blah, blah. I understand, man. This is still a game at the end of the day, and as much as we get passionate about this, have fun and enjoy it. It's okay to lose as long as you're part of the experience. I've lost fantasy championships by 2 points. It is frustrating, but I say congratulations to my opponent. We hug, we cry because fantasy season's over and you move on. It sucks, but it's true. But have fun, enjoy it. Enjoy the camaraderie that comes within your league. Enjoy the fact that you get to shit talk somebody over something as trivial as fantasy football. And remember, at the end of the day, it's 17 weeks where we all finally get brought together. I love fantasy football because me and my friends, we don't got time for this. We all got kids. I got little baby. They got little baby. It's hard to do stuff, but every single season the world stops so we can draft. The Sundays stop so we can all be together for football. Enjoy it while it's here because it truly is the most wonderful time of the year. So as much as we get aggro, as much as we get upset that we lose weeks, have fun and enjoy yourself, man. And I know, like I said, coming from me, somebody who's sitting here going way too far into this for something for fantasy football, enjoy it, man. It's the most wonderful time of the year. I get so geeked up. I'm so excited. So excited y'all are tuning in with me. But like I said, have fun and enjoy it, man, because it goes by like that. Don't blink, man. It goes by. Before we know it, we'll be talking about the Super Bowl on this. So that is my 5 tips for the season. Roll back through them. Rule number 1, be like water. You gotta change. Week 1 is not the same as week 6. Gotta change. We're gonna help you out through that along the season. Number 2, waiver wire is vital to survival. Make sure you know what's going on in that waiver wire. Have some things under your belt, some contingency plans to keep you rolling throughout the season. Number 3, play your weeks. Do not play the entire season. Win week by week by week. Then once week 10, week 11 hits, Then you start preparing for the playoffs. You start thinking about that. But for the most part, get into the playoffs, then worry about long term, week by week by week by week. Number 4, know your league structure. Know the players around you. Know how you can manipulate that. Know when you have to do a little bit extra, a little bit less. Know your league. Know their structure. Know how they react. Know how they defend themselves. Everything like that. Number 5, most importantly, have fun. Enjoy yourself because it is almost over even though it hasn't even started yet. There's 52 weeks in a year. Only 17 of them are fantasy football. So that's why I'm on here, because we want to make it 35 weeks a year. Alrighty. Moving on to the last part of the show, and I got about 4 minutes to run through these, but that's okay because it is kind of an easy list to go through. Now, this is the part of the show where we're going to talk about just terms. So if you know fantasy football, this is probably going to be boring for you, but I want to throw it in for anybody who is brandy new. Somebody invited them to a league this year, and now they're looking at their phone going, what is all this? Now I'm going to try to explain it for you. So, I've broken it down into 5 parts here, okay? The first part is league type. So obviously you know what league means. That's your whole group of friends that you got into this one league. Same thing as NFL is a whole league, blah, blah, blah. So you got your league types. Now you're going to hear the term redraft a lot. Now what redraft is every single year you start from scratch, everybody redrafts an entirely new roster. There's no keepers, no nothing. You all start all over. This is the most common and the most fun way to play fantasy football. The second kind is called Dynasty. This is my second favorite way to play fantasy football, but you really, really need a good group of friends and a really good group who knows what they're doing in order to really accelerate how much fun Dynasty can be. Now what Dynasty is that once you draft, so you have one startup draft with every player in the league, and then you never draft again except for rookies coming in from college. So Dynasty is once you draft the player, you have him on your roster forever until he retires, you drop him or you trade him. So these are usually massive leagues with like 30 player benches sometimes. Me personally, I think the 30 player benches is extremely egregious. Cut that down. Have some fun with it. Make it 10-man bench. The next style is called Keeper League. Now what a Keeper League is more commonly is that you get to keep about 2 players every single year. So it's the same thing as redraft, except for every year you drop everybody except for 2 players. Now when you drop those 2 players, you forfeit the draft round where they are drafted respectfully. Now, a lot of different leagues, they change around the rules a lot, but most commonly, if you're playing in a keeper league and you have somebody like Christian McCaffrey and you choose to keep him, you lose your first round or second round pick. So that's how keeper leagues work. They're very cool. Me personally, I have a full keeper dynasty league. So it's every single position, quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, tight end, flex, kicker, defense. You get to keep one of each on those every single season, and then we drop the bench, and then you redraft from those benches. So it's kind of a keeper/dynasty league. It's a full keeper league. So a lot of different ways that you could do it as well, as long as you have a commissioner who's willing to put in the effort. All right, moving on, league types scoring. So often you will hear standard scoring, PPR, or half-point PPR. Now this show is always based on full PPR. Now I know that the more common structure is half-point PPR, but for a more round approach, for an easier way to kind of get all the information to encompass everybody, I do full PPR on this show because I feel like a lot of shows that I've watched when they do half PPR, it really, really kind of manipulates the data to a point that's a lot different than what I'm focused on here on the show, which is kind of outside the box, guaranteed over, consistency, stuff like that. So it's just a little bit of different structure. So PPR means points per reception. It stands for points per reception, which means every time somebody catches the ball, you get 1 point. Half point PPR subsequently is you get a half a point every time they catch the ball. So like I said, if we're working with whole numbers instead of half numbers, you get a lot more clear picture of what you can look at in the data. So I prefer full point PPR leagues instead of half point PPR leagues, but it's up in the air. It's about your preference. Then there's standard leagues. Now, standard leagues do not have points per reception, and they are an absolutely abysmal, archaic way to play fantasy football. So if you are in a standard league, you probably drink orange juice and have back problems and wear New Balances because you're old, because standard leagues are lame and very, very boring. So if you play in standard leagues, basically it's whoever gets a touchdown is going to win. So standard leagues, you get 6 points for the touchdown, you get no points for the receptions and all that stuff. So very, very boring. Don't like standard leagues. Moving on. Talking about roster. Okay, so your roster is every player that you manage. Now, you're going to hear a lot of people say own. If anybody hears that, oh, I own this player, don't say that. Stop saying that. Manage. You manage that player. You are a fantasy manager. You manage players. You don't own anybody. So when you hear people say, talk about roster, those are the players that you manage. Those are the players that you have on your team that, you can roll with every single week and you don't have to go to the waiver wire for. Those are yours until you trade them or you drop them. That is your roster. Your starters, you're going to hear the word starters. Your starters are the players that you have active that will go towards your scoring for that week. So your starters are everybody that you see in that top category of your page. I'll throw up a little picture here for you. The starters are up here. So this is my actual dynasty team. Take a look. Be jealous. I know it's pretty sick. It's pretty sick. But these are the actual players that you have that are starting. Now, if you scroll down, this is your bench. Your bench is the players that are not active. These are the players that you do have. They belong to you, but you are not starting them. They will not go towards your scoring until you put them in that lineup. Your lineup is your starters. So every time you hear the word lineup, those are your starters, the people who you choose to start for that week. That is your lineup. So if you take anybody from your bench, move them to a starter, they are now part of your lineup. They will go towards your scoring. Anybody on the bench will not go towards your scoring. So be very careful of that. Injuries, all that stuff. Make sure you're paying attention to that throughout the year. So no more of that. Moving on to the positions, your QB, your wide receiver, running back, tight end. If you don't know that, I would hope that you know what those are. That's basic football information. I would hope that you know that. That's a different channel. You can go somewhere else to learn all that stuff. We're talking about fantasy football. Handcuff. You're going to hear the word handcuff a lot. Now, what a handcuff is basically if somebody like Christian McCaffrey is, playing and the next man up for him would be Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard is the handcuff to Christian McCaffrey. So what that means is that if something were to happen to Christian McCaffrey, Chuba Hubbard is basically the guaranteed benefactor. He is the guy you want to handcuff to Christian McCaffrey to make sure if Christian McCaffrey goes down, you have Chuba Hubbard. So the term handcuff is usually used when you place that player on your team. I grab the handcuff. Or sometimes people will say, I grab Christian McCaffrey's handcuff and they put it on their team. But typically a handcuff is when you draft that player and he goes onto your team and then you have both players on their respective team. Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams. Those are handcuffs. Those are players that they team together. So if one thing happens to or if something, God forbid, happens to one player, you know the other player is good to go. Drop. You hear the term drop. You hear me say start, sit, drop. Starting somebody is somebody that you're putting into your lineup. Sitting means you don't want to play that person. You want them to be on your bench. Sitting them means putting them on the bench, just like in real life. I'm sitting you, you're going onto the bench. Dropping. Dropping means you are cutting that player from your team. You no longer want them. They end up on the waiver wire. So your waiver wire rules might be different. You have to check that out as well. Your waiver wire might be 2-3 day drop. Now, if you drop somebody accidentally, okay, this is a big point that a lot of players talk to me about all year. If you're dropping somebody accidentally and it happens, I get this question every single year. What should happen? What's fair? It is up to the discretion of your league. I get people who ask me every single year, is it fair if I drop somebody by accident and then they won't let me put him back on my team? This is a league. This is a competitive fantasy football. I understand, like I said, it's for fun, but this is competitive. People want to win. If you accidentally drop somebody after the screen or the application that you're using asked you twice, you drop that player. It is up to the discretion of the league. Now, I'm a commissioner for a lot of leagues. Me personally, I will say, okay, listen, I think I play in a league with my mom. I think one year she dropped Dalvin Cook. Nobody's getting Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook is going back on that team whether anybody in the league likes it or not. Nobody is getting Dalvin Cook off the waiver wire. Now, if you drop somebody like T.Y. Hilton and you're like, I didn't mean to do that, can I have him back? And the whole rest of the league is freaking out saying, no, they lost that person. It is what it is. And it is what it is. You drop that player. It asked you 2 times if you're sure you want to drop that player, and you hit yes, you drop that player. So it is up to the discretion of your league. If anybody out there is saying, hey, too bad, then it's too bad. So it's up, know your league, like we said, know your league. If your league is vicious about stuff like that, be very, very careful when you're making ad drops because they are not going to have discretion for you. All right, moving on to some name things that you're going to see a lot. Some designations. Now, healthy is an active player. They will not have any designation next to their name in your application, whatever you're playing on, Sleeper, Yahoo. Do not play on ESPN, please. If you're playing on ESPN, sort your life out. Should be playing on Sleeper. That's the best app. That's the best platform. Love it. Yahoo's cool too, but it's kind of, they don't update anything. They don't care. They just made a platform. They're like, here, go play. We don't care. So I don't like Yahoo, but Sleeper is my favorite. But talking about designations, you're going to hear things like IR a lot. Now, IR stands for Injured Reserve. That is a player who is out for more than 4 weeks. He is going to be out for a while or indefinitely. Those players can go into your IR roster spot if your league has them. So that means you can place that player there as long as he is on Injured Reserve and he is unable to play in games. It frees you up a roster spot so you can grab somebody beforehand. So if your league has an IR spot and one of your players gets hurt on a Sunday, be very cautious on Monday and Tuesday that you can move them and pick somebody up on the waiver wire without blocking your roster, without going over roster limit. So pay attention to that. Wicked important. We'll talk about that a lot during the season. Questionable. You'll see questionable pop up. Questionable means that this player has a 50-50 chance of playing in the game. Now, everybody here and anybody who has ever played fantasy football will know that questionable is the most frustrating part of any player that you have on your team. If it is a Sunday and your player is questionable, be very, very worried or be very, very up on what his status is because it could go either way. Doubtful. You will see doubtful a lot. It'll be marked by a little D. Question will be marked by a little Q on your screen. Doubtful means that that player has a 25% chance or less of playing in the game. Now, if he is doubtful, make proper precautions right now because that player is likely not playing. Now, you're going to see out sometimes. That's a little red O that pops up, probably when they're on IR as well. Some leagues, they allow you to put out players on your IR. Out obviously means 0% chance that player plays. Other things, other different kind of verbiages. You're going to hear IDP a lot. That's independent defensive player. That's a defensive player from any part of the defense that you can slot onto your league. Now, a lot of players out there will go, oh, I like this cornerback. I'll take this cornerback. Don't take a cornerback. Take a linebacker. Take a defensive end. It's probably going to be a linebacker. I remember I grabbed Darius Leonard in his rookie year, like out of sheer luck, and then I got a #1 defensive player for the entire year. So pay attention to your IDPs and your kickers. A lot of people hate them, but they can really be studs for you. You're going to hear flex a lot. Your flex spot, depending on what type of league you're in, flex is mostly wide receiver, running back, tight end. Now those 3 players, any time that you have a flex spot, you can put anybody from those positions in that flex. Wide receiver, running back, tight end. You can only pick one, but if it's a flex, you can put them in that spot. Super flex. These leagues are overpowered. You've desensitized yourself to fantasy football, and now you and your friends just want to go crazy, balls to the wall with points, and people have so many quarterbacks. 2 quarterback leagues, kind of fun. Super flex league, little bit ridiculous. So super flex is the same thing as flex, except you can put a quarterback in that position. So imagine you're playing against somebody who has Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, and you got another quarterback, but in your flex you got TJ Hawkinson. Not fair. Not fair. So super flex leagues, I'm not a big fan of. Moving on to Waiver Wire. Waiver Wire is the free agents that you have that are not rostered by anybody in the entire league. So that is the Waiver Wire. It is a complete list of every player in the NFL who is currently on a team but is not on a roster within your league. Now you hear the term free agent. Now free agent means you do not have to spend your waiver priority to go and get them. So everybody's league, you'll go to this little screen, it'll kind of show, this is actually my Dynasty League. Over here it says waiver priority, and it'll show you the list of what number you are in, what order you are in for your waiver priority. So in most leagues, Tuesday night into Wednesday morning is waivers clearing. So if you place a waiver for Cooper Kupp, obviously it's not on the waiver wire, but if you place a waiver and you're number 2 for Cooper Kupp, but the person in front of you places a waiver number 1, they're going to get that player, but you're going to shoot up to number 1. Now if you place 2 waivers and they get their guy and then you get your guy, you were going to fall down to 8th because they got their player and then next you got your player, you see? So it's kind of a rolling list of succession that moves everybody up. So that's how the waiver wire works. Your waiver position is super important. On Tuesday into Wednesday, the waiver wire is clear. On Wednesday morning, everybody turns into a free agent, which means you can pick up anybody without having to spend your waiver claim. So very important, make sure you're keeping an eye out for your waivers. Now you'll hear FAAB a lot, FAAB, that is free agent acquisition budget. And now if you do not play in a FAAB league, a free agent acquisition budget league, I strongly suggest that you try it out or at least mention it to your league mates because it is the best way to do the waiver wire. Now there's every year where I go throughout the year and I have players in my league that are hoarding their waiver 1, 2, or 3 because they don't want to lose it. They want to make sure when that player goes down, they got the running back one. Well, those 3 teams are usually teams that know what they're doing and they're pretty high up there. And I'm sitting at 6th or 7th, so I don't care about you losing my waiver pick. And every single season, I am grabbing a bunch of players every single Tuesday into Wednesday while I'm getting sleep. I'm not waking up at 3 a.m. to pick anybody up. I'm spending a waiver 6 and falling down to 8. And then the next week, there's somebody to pick up. I'm at waiver 8 still, and waiver 1, 2, and 3 don't want to risk losing that top spot. So they're passing up on players in hopes of getting them later on for free while I'm scooping them up and I'm going from 6 to 8, 8 to 8, 7 to 8. I don't care. I'm getting my sleep and I'm getting my players while they're hoarding picks that are never going to come for them. So they wait all that time. I know one of the big ones last year was everybody was waiting for Chuba Hubbard. They finally grabbed him and he took a dump on them. So big example. Grab the players that you need. Don't hoard that waiver spot. And when you see it coming up, grab what you need to. So with that being said, I grabbed a ton of players last year that I didn't necessarily need, that teams really needed, but they were scared to spend on it. That's where free agent acquisition budget comes in, FAAB. This is an allowance that you get every single year, so it's usually about $100. And then you can spend on what players that you want. So if you really need a running back one week, but you know that people are going to go up there and they're going to spend for it, then you can spend 30% of your FAAB budget, spend $30 while everybody's spending $10, $15, and now you have that player and you need him most. So it really is kind of a scales of justice thing that really occurs within fantasy football, that FAAB really sets leagues apart and fairness. So I really like FAAB. If you're in a league that doesn't do FAAB, I strongly suggest it. Recommend it to your league mates and try it out one year. Maybe have a separate league that you guys really don't care about. Maybe it's a non-money league. You guys do too. Check out the FAAB because I really do think it's a game changer for some people. All right, we have draft terms. We're going to do that on the Draft Strategies and Tips show because I'm way over time right now. Various terms I'm going to fly through right now. Boom or bust. You'll hear us say boom or bust. That means one player that he either is going to go through the moon, he's going to be great for you, or he's going to be absolutely terrible. So that's boom. This player is going to boom. He's going to explode. He's going to be awesome. He's going to score 30 points. Or he's going to be a bust. He's going to score 10 points. He's going to be way below projections, way below what you think. So he's a boom or bust player. You hear the word mock. When we say mock, it's not go make fun of your league mates, even though we encourage that as well. Mock means a mock draft, a fake draft. And if you have not done any mock drafts yet, go into your league app, your sleeper app, your Yahoo app, your ESPN app, whatever it may be, and if you're, turn on your BlackBerry if you're using your ESPN app, open up your Motorola Razr if you're using ESPN, but do mock drafts. Go on your computer, do fake drafts because it changes every single day. Me and John just did the ADP check show on our last show, and players are moving around like crazy. So if you do a mock draft today and then go into your draft 3 weeks from now, it's going to be a lot different. You're going to be behind the 8 ball. So make sure you're doing a couple mock drafts a week. Really sets you apart. The term sleeper, if you hear the word sleeper, that is a player that nobody is talking about, or he's going like in the 9th, 10th round. We had a whole sleeper show where we talk about players that are going very, very late, but they can return top end value. So that's what a sleeper is. A breakout is a player who has not yet really turned into form, but he is going to explode this year, and we either expect him to explode or he has done it already so. So like, I was a big fan of Devontae Adams when he was with Jordy Nelson. He was a breakout for me. We had Josh Allen one year as a breakout on this show. Wide receivers. I'm trying to think of some more running backs. I was all over Dameon Pierce, Jonathan Taylor. A lot of different breakout players like that where they're not being talked about, but we expect big things from them, and then they break out. They kind of break out of the cage and they end up doing a bunch of stuff. So that's what breakout means. Streamer or flyer. A streamer or a flyer player is somebody that you pick up, you put on your roster, you watch what happens, and you drop them without ever feeling bad about it. So a streamer or flyer player. I picked up Julio Jones as a streamer in my Dynasty League, and now he plays with Tom Brady. So that's a streamer flyer player where I picked him up, let's see what happens, and if he went to the Jaguars or a team that I didn't like, I throw him away. You know what I mean? But you have him, you see what happens. Bye weeks. This just means teams that your players aren't playing at all. Bye weeks. They get the week off. Ceiling and floor, those two terms. Your ceiling, so if I say Cooper Kupp's ceiling is 30 points, that means his top game, highest game would be 30 points. His floor is 10 points. That's his worst game. Worst case scenario, Cooper Kupp gives you 10 points. So if we say running back 2 is about his floor, we're saying that on a really bad day, he's going to give you running back 2 value. So that's what floor means. Ceiling is his highest potential. Projection. Projection is obviously exactly what projection means in definition. It means they are what we expect them to do. And then the last two terms, rookie and veteran, you can kind of sum those up. Veteran means they've been here for a while. Rookie means they just got here and they don't know anything and they are babies. So everybody, thank you so much for tuning in here to Fantasy Daily for this beginner's guide. If you guys got any questions, go ahead and drop them below in the comments on YouTube. Everybody who's been tuning with me on TikTok, I appreciate you for watching tomorrow's episode tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I am your host, Nathan Passwell. I love y'all. Thank you so much. And we are going to be back this week for the AFC North show tomorrow. So we got AFC North, AFC East, West, South, all that. We're going to be covering all those teams, and then we'll do draft strategies next Monday. So we've got a lot of fun stuff coming on for you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, take care and have a good night.